The late afternoon sun draped Sonoma Valley in a soft gold that made every vineyard row shimmer like threads of light, woven through the rolling hills. The wedding venue sat in the center of that beauty, a luxury estate with stone archways, white roses, cascading from balconies, and strings of warm bulbs, glowing above tables dressed in ivory linens. Guests moved across the terrace in tailored suits and pastel gowns, the clinking of champagne glasses ringing like tiny bells under the sky. Laughter floated among the clusters of people who knew their wealth and were comfortable displaying it. At the far end of the courtyard, next to a table decorated with lavender sprigs and charcuterie boards, stood Ava Lawson, trying to make herself small. She tugged at the hem of her sage green dress with her one remaining hand, the fabric soft beneath her fingers. Her missing left arm, ending neatly above the elbow, was something she had grown used to living with. Yet today it felt unbearably loud. She could feel the glances even when people pretended not to stare. A pair of older women walked past her with polite smiles that felt like needles. Bless her heart, she came alone again. The second woman whispered back, without lowering her voice enough, "I cannot imagine how hard dating must be with only one arm." Ava's throat tightened. She stared down at her sparkling water. Her invitation to Amber's wedding had come with all the right words. "You will be my maid of honor in spirit, but I know you do not want the attention." Ava had laughed it off at the time. Now she understood what her sister really meant. Tension today was for beautiful, complete people, not for her. A woman in her 60s approached her with a gentle smile that carried a familiar sting. "Sweetie, men want someone whole. But you are strong. You will find someone." She patted Ava's shoulder as if consoling a child. Ava's skin burned beneath the touch. Before she could step away, Amber swept by in a breathtaking lace gown, radiant and glowing, the picture of a California bride. She paused just long enough to say something she meant as protective, but it sliced Ava open. Ava does not need a date. She only needs company. Do not make her uncomfortable. The table of guests chuckled softly, the kind of laughter that pretended to be harmless. Ava felt her chest hollow out. She stared at Amber, but her sister was already turning to greet another guest, her veil floating behind her like a cloud of privilege. Ava swallowed hard. She needed to leave. Just 5 minutes alone. Maybe in the garden. Maybe anywhere people would not look at her like a project or a charity case. She took one step away from the table, and at that exact moment, the grand oak doors of the estate swung open. The breeze shifted. Conversations faltered. A man stepped through the entrance, and the entire wedding seemed to inhale at once. He was tall with a calm, purposeful stride, dressed in a midnight blue suit that fit his frame with sharp, clean lines. His hair was slightly tousled, as if he had driven fast with the windows down, and his eyes were a piercing gray that scanned the courtyard with quiet power. There was something about him that felt unmistakably out of place in the best way. Old money confidence, mystery, strength held tightly under control. Guests who believed they had seen every type of wealthy man looked at him and felt small. Whispers rose instantly. "Who is that? Do you know him? Is he someone famous?" Amber looked up from across the courtyard and blinked as if her perfect wedding had been interrupted by a plot twist she had not approved. The man did not look at her. He did not look at anyone. His eyes found Ava as if she were the only person standing there. Her breath caught painfully. He walked straight toward her with steady steps, past clusters of confused guests, past Amber's wide eyes, past the murmurs building like a wave. Ava froze. This could not be real. Not him, not here, not now. He stopped right in front of her, close enough that she could see the faint shadow of stubble on his jaw, and the warmth in his gaze meant only for her. Before she could speak, he slipped a hand across the small of her back with gentle confidence and said in a low voice that carried across the courtyard, "Sorry I am late, sweetheart. Could not find parking." The world stopped. Every head turned. Amber's smile fell completely. Ava felt her knees weaken. She could not speak. She could not breathe. He leaned slightly closer, his voice soft enough for only her. "Breathe, I am here." And just like that, the forgotten sister became the center of the entire wedding. Before the moment, Ethan walked into her sister's wedding and rewrote her entire existence with a single sentence. Ava Lawson had lived a life defined by quiet corners and invisible battles. She had once been someone full of color. As a teenager, she filled sketchbooks with designs of rooms. She wished she could build, imagining sunlight slanting through windows. She had never seen fabrics she hoped one day to touch chandeliers drawn in pencil that sparkled in her mind long before she ever stepped into luxury spaces. She had been accepted into the interior design program at CalArts, a dream so vivid she could taste it. She remembered arriving on campus with a second-hand drafting board, cheap pencils, and the kind of hope that made everything feel possible. That was before the accident. It happened on a rainy November night during her sophomore year when she was driving home from a late shift at a coffee shop. A pickup truck skidded through a red light and slammed into the driver's side of her tiny car. The sound of metal folding in on itself still haunted her. She woke up in the hospital with the machines beeping, the smell of antiseptic sharp in her lungs, and a doctor gently explaining that her left arm could not be saved. She had stared at the ceiling while her world cracked apart. Losing an arm was not only physical pain, it was the loss of a future she had carefully built in her mind. Sketching was still possible, of course, but drafting, modeling, carrying boards, arranging furniture, presenting concepts, everything that required two hands suddenly felt like a mountain she had no strength left to climb. She tried to return to school, but she lasted only 6 weeks. The stares, the awkward sympathy, the way professors hesitated before giving her assignments as if she were fragile glass, all of it broke her down. She left quietly at the start of the next semester. Her parents, loving but overwhelmed, treated her with the delicate caution people reserve for the injured. Friends tried to be supportive, but often said the wrong things. You are still beautiful. You are still capable. You are still lucky to be alive. All true, but none of it made her feel whole. In America, where perfection seemed to be a silent social currency, Ava suddenly felt bankrupt. She avoided mirrors for months and wore long sweaters even in summer to hide the scar she was not ready to see. She denied every invitation to parties, dinners, reunions. She convinced herself she preferred the quiet. Eventually, she moved into a small studio apartment above a florist shop in Santa Rosa and started working remotely as a digital design assistant for a boutique firm that never once asked to see her in person. She answered emails, edited mock-ups, and lived in a cycle of silent days and sleepless nights. But loneliness is heavy, and even the strongest people eventually bend under its weight. That was when she downloaded Lumen Lincoln app, known for deeper conversations rather than surface-level dating. Profiles were text-only unless both users chose to share photos. It was a place where no one judged first impressions by perfect smiles or symmetrical bodies. She had not intended to match with anyone seriously. She told herself she was only there to remember how to talk to another human without fear. Then Ethan appeared in her inbox. His first message was not a compliment, not a shallow question, but a thoughtful line about a book she had mentioned on her profile. He asked about her taste in design, and she expected him to lose interest when she admitted she had left school early. Instead, he asked what she would create if money, time, and fear did not exist. She told him about her dream of designing sensory-friendly spaces for children with disabilities, something she had thought about before the accident, but never imagined she would pursue again. His replies came quickly, always curious, always gentle. He never asked about photos, never pushed for details she did not want to share. Their conversations stretched from short questions to long midnight confessions. They talked about coffee preferences, grief, favorite city skylines, and what happiness looked like when stripped of expectations. She learned he worked in biotech, but assumed he was a mid-level researcher or an engineer. He spoke of his work with a calm humility that gave nothing away. He asked often about her routines, her art, and the challenges of doing small tasks with one hand. One night, she struggled trying to clasp a bracelet Amber had gifted her. She wanted to practice doing things on her own, but grew frustrated when the clasp kept slipping. She typed a message with trembling fingers. "I feel ridiculous. I cannot even put on a bracelet without wanting to cry." His reply came immediately. "It is not ridiculous. It is human. I wish I were there. I would help you." Something in her chest cracked open. No one had ever spoken to her that way. Not with pity, not with judgment, just pure, honest care. For weeks leading up to Amber's wedding, Ethan checked in daily. He asked how she felt, what dress she planned to wear, and whether she had support if things became overwhelming. She had laughed nervously when she mentioned that people would look at her differently. His response had been simple. "If they stare, it is their limitation, not yours." When Amber's big day approached, Ava found herself spiraling with dread. She knew her sister meant well. Amber had always been the dazzling one, the one who turned heads effortlessly. Their relationship had been close when they were younger, but over the years, Ava felt the silent distance grow. Not out of malice, but out of difference. Amber lived in a world of spotlights. Ava lived in shadows she did not choose. The night before the wedding, Ethan sensed something in her messages. Nervous about tomorrow. What if people look at me like they always do? What if I fall apart? He replied after a moment. "You could invite someone to be by your side, someone you trust." She typed without thinking, "like you." It was meant to be a joke, a half-hearted thought tossed into the void to make herself feel braver. But his response did not come with a laugh. "Send me the address." She stared at her screen for a full minute, convinced she had misunderstood. But he meant it. And with trembling fingers and a heart she was sure would betray her, she sent it. She never expected he would actually come. When Ethan Ward walked into Amber Lawson's wedding, the shift in the atmosphere was immediate and undeniable. Conversations stuttered mid-sentence, champagne flutes hovered in the air, and heads turned in a slow wave as if guided by an unseen current. Ava felt the room tilt around her. Until this moment, Ethan had only existed in the warm glow of her phone screen, a comforting presence on long nights when loneliness pressed too tightly against her ribs. Seeing him in person, tall and sharply composed, in a tailored navy suit that fit him like a second skin, made her wonder whether she was dreaming or hallucinating. He carried himself with a kind of quiet power that needed no announcement. It was in the straight line of his shoulders, the way his hands stayed relaxed at his sides, and the effortless steadiness of his gaze. He walked as if every doorway had opened for him his entire life, though nothing about him felt arrogant. It was confidence shaped by discipline, not vanity. Ava wanted to disappear and run toward him all at once. Guests whispered in the way wealthy Americans often do when gossip feels like a social sport. "Who is he? Is that Ethan Ward? I saw him in Forbes last month. Why would someone like him be here and with her?" The words soaked into her skin like cold rain. Before she could shrink back, Ethan gently placed a hand on the small of her back, grounding her with a touch that felt both protective and familiar. He turned her just enough so she could see his face fully. Gray eyes, softening lips, curving in the smallest smile, he murmured, "You look stunning, Ava." The word stunning hit her like a shock. No one had said that to her in years. Not since before the accident. Not since she had stopped believing she could ever be described that way. A man in a charcoal suit approached with the eager stride of someone hungry for proximity to power. "Forgive me, but are you Ethan Ward?" Ethan turned his head with the calm politeness of someone accustomed to being recognized, but uninterested in attention. "Yes." The man blinked rapidly. "The Ethan Ward, Ward Biotech." Ethan gave a small nod. The man's gaze flicked to Ava and lingered with a mixture of confusion and judgment that made her stomach twist. "And you two are together." His tone carried the kind of unfiltered disbelief polite society tries to hide, but never fully masks. Ava braced herself, already pulling her hand away, prepared to make a joke or excuse to save them both embarrassment. But Ethan caught her fingers gently and threaded his hand through hers with a deliberate ease that left no room for misinterpretation. "Yes, we are," he said, his voice steady. The man's smile faltered. He looked at Ava again, this time longer, analyzing her dress, her missing arm, her posture. The invisible math people did when something did not make sense to their worldview. Ava felt heat crawl up her neck. She tried to pull away, but Ethan's hold tightened just enough to reassure her. Then the man said something she had dreaded her entire life. "If you do not mind my asking, how do you navigate dating with your situation?" It was clumsy, invasive, and deeply condescending. Ava's breath caught. She felt the familiar sting behind her eyes. The air grew too tight around her. Before she could answer, Ethan turned slightly, placing himself between her and the question like a shield. His tone was polite, but cold as steel beneath ice. "Her disability is not a limitation. But clearly your manners are." The man's jaw dropped. Several guests gasped softly. Someone choked on their champagne. Ava's eyes widened. Ethan did not look away. He held the man's gaze until discomfort forced him to mutter an apology and retreat into the crowd. And just like that, the wedding's social hierarchy shattered. People who had overlooked Ava now stared with dawning curiosity. The forgotten twin had arrived with a man who commanded the entire room with a single line and chose her hand without hesitation. Amber appeared beside them in a sudden flurry of lace and perfume. Her smile stretched tight. She looked between Ava and Ethan as if trying to recalculate the story she thought she understood. "Hi, I am Amber," she said brightly. "The bride. I had no idea Ava was bringing someone." Ethan offered a polite nod. "I wanted to be here for her." Amber blinked once, then her eyes flicked to Ava. Her expression was equal parts surprise and something Ava could not name. Maybe envy, maybe disbelief, maybe something more complicated. "Oh, well, we are glad you could join us," Amber said with an airy laugh that did not reach her eyes. The whispers surged like electricity through the courtyard. Ava Lawson brought Ethan Ward. Ethan Ward is dating her. How did she meet him? Why her? Ava stood frozen, her heart pounding hard enough to shake her bones. She did not know whether to run, cry, or cling to him. Ethan leaned slightly closer, his voice soft enough that no one else could hear. "Are you all right?" She nodded even though she was not sure. His thumb brushed the back of her hand in the smallest reassuring movement, a gesture intimate enough that several nearby guests stared openly. While Amber excused herself to greet others, a circle of people formed around Ethan almost instantly. Bankers, tech executives, realtors, doctors, all eager to speak to him, to be seen by him, to be acknowledged by a man whose influence stretched farther than most of them would ever achieve. Yet every time someone addressed him, Ethan subtly angled his body, so Ava remained within the circle rather than outside it. When someone asked with thinly veiled skepticism, "So how did you two meet?" Ethan responded before Ava could stumble. "She is the most honest person I have ever met. That alone makes her rare." Ava felt her throat tighten with an emotion she did not know how to contain. No one had ever spoken about her that way. Not with sincerity, not with pride, not with the kind of quiet reverence that made people look at her differently. For the first time in years, she felt seen in a way that did not hurt. She felt valued. Ethan's presence beside her was not performative. It was intentional. She could feel it in every subtle gesture. The way he positioned himself to protect her. The way his voice softened when speaking to her. The way he looked at her like she was not broken, not incomplete, not lesser, but simply Ava. The woman he had chosen to walk toward in a room full of people waiting for his attention. And in that moment, surrounded by strangers who had spent the evening pitying her, Ava realized something terrifying and beautiful. Ethan Ward was not pretending, and neither was she. Dinner at Amber Lawson's wedding was supposed to be elegant and effortless, a seamless blend of fine dining soft jazz, drifting from hidden speakers and polite conversations among Sonoma Valley's upper circle. Instead, it became the stage where two worlds collided with a force Ava had never imagined. When the servers announced that dinner was being plated, guests made their way toward the long oak tables arranged beneath strings of golden lights. Amber, glowing in her lace gown, floated between groups of admirers, soaking in the spotlight with her familiar practiced grace. Ava followed behind Ethan as he guided her toward the table assigned to Amber's family and inner circle. She wished she could hide in the shadow of the vineyard, rather than sit under the scrutiny of people who still looked at her as if trying to solve an equation. Ethan pulled out her chair with a calm gentleness that made Ava's heart skip. He took the seat beside her, ignoring several guests who had tried to discreetly wave him over to their own table in hopes of gaining proximity to his influence. A doctor at the table leaned forward, eyes bright with recognition. "Ethan Ward, I never thought I would see you at a Lawson wedding." Ethan smiled politely. "Ava invited me." A soft wave of surprise passed through the table like a quiet tremor. A venture capitalist sitting across from them smirked slightly at Ava. "And how exactly did you two meet?" The tone was coated with sugar, but carried the unmistakable edge of condescension. Before Ava could stumble through a half-truth, Ethan answered in a steady voice. "We connected through long conversations. She is someone I trust." Ava felt her cheeks warm. Trust, such a rare word in her life. The banker to her left leaned in, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "That is unusual for someone of your position. Most high-profile men prefer people in similar circles." He said it without malice, but with a casual elitism that stung. Ava started to shrink back, but Ethan lightly brushed his fingers against hers under the table, grounding her again. Amber's bridesmaid, a woman with polished nails and a flawless blowout, looked at Ava with an expression that was equal parts sympathy and curiosity. "I mean, it must be so interesting for you, Ava, dating someone so accomplished." The way she emphasized the word, you made Ava's stomach twist. Another guest chimed in, this one a tech executive who enjoyed hearing his own voice. "I imagine it must be an adjustment. Very different lifestyles. Very different expectations." Ethan finally raised his eyes to the executive and the entire table quieted. "I chose her." His tone was calm but absolute. The executive cleared his throat and looked away. Ava felt her pulse thundering. She had never been defended so consistently, so sincerely. It felt dangerous to her heart. Amber swept in, then her smile wide, though her eyes darted between Ava and Ethan, as if she could not decide whether to be pleased or disturbed. She stood behind Ava's chair, her bouquet trailing faintly in the air. "I hope you are enjoying dinner," she said brightly, then added, "You two seem very close." It was not a question. Ethan looked up at her with the same politeness he had offered everyone else. "Ava is incredibly important to me." The words landed like a dropped crystal. Beautiful but fragile. The bridesmaid's fork clattered lightly against her plate. Several guests exchanged looks. Amber's lashes fluttered for a moment too long. "Oh, that is lovely," she said, with a voice that was too high and too controlled. "Just lovely." She reached for her champagne glass on the table, fingers tightening around the stem, more than necessary. For a moment Ava saw it. The flicker of jealousy. Not cruel jealousy, but the kind born from a lifetime of being the center of attention. A lifetime of being the twin who drew every gaze effortlessly. Amber forced a laugh and leaned toward Ethan. "So Ethan, what exactly do you do again? I heard something about tech." Ethan answered with the professionalism of someone used to condensing his identity into a single sentence. "I oversee Ward Biotech." A smaller gasp came from the bridesmaid. That Ward, as in the medical innovation company, the one developing prosthetics and mobility systems. Ethan nodded. "Yes." The banker whistled softly. "And you took the time to come to a wedding no one expected you at." Ethan looked at Ava then, with a gentleness that made her chest tighten. It was an easy decision. Ava nearly forgot to breathe. Dinner plates arrived, but no one seemed capable of focusing on the food. Every conversation revolved around Ethan, around Ava, around the impossible pairing that made no logical sense to the room. Every now and then, someone asked a question directed at Ethan, but disguised as curiosity about Ava. "So what interested you about her? What do you two talk about? How close are you really?" Ava's hand began trembling beneath the table. She felt exposed, too visible, too breakable. Her entire life she had been treated as the twin who needed sheltering, the twin who was unlucky. the twin who would probably never have a real love story. And now suddenly, she had the attention she never wanted. Ethan must have sensed her downward spiral, because he shifted his hand beneath the table and let his fingers rest over hers. The silent gesture was warm and steady. She felt her breathing begin to return. When the first course plates were cleared, the conversation took a turn, Ava feared. A woman in a silk dress leaned forward with a narrow smile. "Ethan, do you ever worry about challenges in a relationship like this?" The word "this" was sharp-pointed and unmistakably referring to Ava's missing arm. Ava's stomach clenched painfully. She felt small like the shy girl sitting in the hospital bed all over again. Ethan set down his water glass slowly and looked at the woman with an expression that was not angry, but incredibly controlled. The only challenge here is the way people assume they can reduce her to a single detail. The woman blanched. The table fell silent again. Finally, Ethan lifted Ava's hand and placed it openly on the table, his thumb brushing her skin in a way that felt intimate yet respectful. "Ava is extraordinary," he said quietly. "If anyone here cannot see that the limitation is theirs, not hers." Ava's heart fractured in the most beautiful way. She had spent years being invisible. In one night, Ethan made it impossible for anyone to look through her again. For the first time, she wondered if maybe she was allowed to be someone more than the girl people pitied. Maybe with him, she could be someone worth seeing. And that realization was almost more overwhelming than the humiliation had been. The music shifted just as the sun dipped below the rolling hills of Sonoma Valley, casting a honey gold glow across the courtyard. A soft melody drifted through hidden speakers, slow enough to coax couples toward the dance floor. Crystal lights shimmered above the space, reflecting against white tablecloths and champagne glasses. Ava watched as guests rose from their seats, many eager to be seen, others simply wanting to sway under the vineyard twilight. She wished she could melt into her chair and become invisible again, especially after the gauntlet of questions and stares during dinner. Her chest was tight, her breathing shallow, and her palms still tingled from Ethan's reassuring touch. She took a steadying sip of water, trying to calm the tremor in her left hand, the only hand she had left. But before she could fully gather herself, Ethan rose from his seat. His movements were unhurried but purposeful, the kind that drew attention even in complete silence. He stepped around the table, stopping directly in front of her, his hand extended, his voice lowered to a soft invitation. "Dance with me, Ava." Her heart jolted. She looked around instinctively, hoping someone else would distract him first, but every set of eyes seemed to widen, waiting for her answer. She swallowed hard. "I cannot," she whispered, embarrassment crawling up her neck. Ethan crouched slightly, so he remained level with her gaze. His voice gentled in a way that made her throat ache. "You do not have to be perfect. You only have to be with me." She shook her head slightly, panic edging into her voice. "I only have one arm. I cannot do a real dance." Ethan's expression softened even more. He reached forward slowly enough that she could pull back, if she wanted to. His hand hovered near the side where her right arm once was respectful but steady. "Then let me be your missing rhythm," he said quietly. The words hit her like a tremor, not pity, not reassurance, not scripted empathy. Something deeper, something she had craved but never dared to name. A few guests gasped softly, their reactions faint but unmistakable. Even Amber, who had been speaking to a distant cousin, near the bar turned her head sharply. She blinked, taken aback, at the sight unfolding before her. Ava wanted to refuse to protect herself from becoming a spectacle again, but Ethan's eyes held her gently. No pressure, no expectation, only presence. Slowly, almost against her own fear, Ava placed her left hand in his. His fingers closed around hers with a warmth that calmed her trembling. Ethan helped her to her feet. The murmurs rose like wind across the courtyard as he led her to the open space where couples were already dancing. When they reached the center, the crowd instinctively parted just enough to create a natural spotlight around them. Ava hesitated, her breath trembling in her chest. Ethan stepped close, not too close, but near enough for her to feel the steady warmth radiating from him. He lifted her left hand gently and placed it on his shoulder. Her breath caught. Then he did something that made her entire body still. He slid his right hand to rest on the space where her other arm had once been. Not on the fabric, not in a way that avoided the truth, but directly there. A respectful, warm, steady connection, as if honoring something precious rather than fragile. Ava inhaled sharply, her eyes lifting to his in disbelief. He held her gaze. "May I?" asked quietly. No one had ever asked. They had stared, avoided, or pretended not to notice, but no one had asked. She nodded. He began to guide her in slow steps, small enough that she could follow even without two hands. At first she was stiff, her movements jerky with fear, but Ethan was patient. His touch balanced her, his steps matched hers. His hand on her missing arm moved gently, not to fill the absence, but to support her center of gravity in a way that made her feel whole rather than exposed. Her heartbeat found the rhythm before her feet did. The world around them faded the music, softening into something that wrapped around her chest like silk. Slowly her breath evened. Her shoulders loosened. She let herself lean into his guidance. When Ava finally lifted her head, she saw it. People had stopped dancing. Couples had stepped aside. Servers froze mid-stride. Even the string quartet faltered for a moment, the violin bow pausing in the air. Every eye watched them, not with pity, but with awe. Ethan noticed the silence, but did not look away from her. He whispered, "Only me, Ava. Just look at me." She did. For the first time that night, she let herself be fully seen. His hand moved with quiet confidence. Her body responded with trust she did not know she could give so easily. When he spun her gently, using only her one arm and his steady palm at her back, a soft murmur rippled through the guests. Amber stood frozen near the bar, the champagne flute trembling in her hand. Her perfect posture sagged just slightly as she watched her sister, the sister who had always lived in her shadow, suddenly become the center of the universe. It was not jealousy alone. It was bewilderment, a dawning realization that something irreversible was unfolding. Ethan guided Ava closer, their foreheads nearly touching. She felt his breath against her cheek, warm and steady. He murmured so softly, only she could hear, "You belong here more than anyone in this room." Her throat tightened, her eyes stung. She whispered back, "I do not know how to do this." "You already are," he said. "You are doing it just by being here." A single tear slipped down her cheek. She did not wipe it away. Ethan's thumb brushed it lightly. A gesture so tender it made several guests look away, as though the moment was too intimate to intrude on. Ava felt something shift inside her, something she had been holding back for years. Fear slowly loosened its grip on her. Shame softened, and for a brief, breathtaking moment, She allowed herself to imagine a world where she was more than her scars, more than her missing arm, more than the girl people pitied. With Ethan's hand holding her steady and eyes reflecting only admiration, Ava felt herself becoming someone new, someone worth loving, someone worth choosing, someone worth dancing with in front of an entire world that once overlooked her. As the final notes of the song faded, Ethan leaned forward, just enough for their temples to touch. "Thank you for trusting me," he whispered. Her voice trembled. "Thank you for seeing me." And when the next song began, the applause that rose from the guests shook the vineyard. For the first time in her life, Ava did not flinch from the attention. She held Ethan's hand and breathed. The vineyard lights dimmed slightly as the night settled deeper into Sonoma Valley, but Ava felt more awake than she had in years. The dance still hummed beneath her skin, a warm echo pulsing through her ribs. When Ethan gently guided her away from the dance floor toward a quieter corner of the courtyard, her breath hitched with equal parts anticipation and disbelief. The string quartet eased into a softer melody, offering a sense of privacy even within the open space. Ethan stopped near the edge of the vineyard, where rows of grapevines stretched into the dark, swaying lightly in the breeze. From here, the celebration behind them sounded like a distant wave of laughter and clinking glass, rather than a storm of judgment and whispers. Ava stood quietly, fingers brushing the fabric of her dress, trying to gather courage. She felt exposed raw, still trembling from the intensity of the dance. Ethan turned to her hands slipping casually into his pockets, though his posture held a tension she had not noticed before. "Thank you for dancing with me, Ava." His voice was gentle, sincere. Ava shook her head softly. "You did all the work. I just tried not to fall." Ethan smiled. "You did more than you think. That dance meant something to me." Her breath tangled in her throat. She wondered if he felt the same quiet electricity. She did the pull that made standing close to him feel both terrifying and deeply right. A group of guests nearby murmured his name, trying to gauge whether they should approach. Ethan noticed and subtly shifted, so his body blocked her from their view. He lowered his voice. "Can we step away for a moment? I want to talk to you without an audience." Ava nodded, grateful for the escape. They walked along a stone path leading toward the edge of the vineyard. Lanterns flickered along the walkway, casting golden circles of light on the ground. When they reached a small overlook where the valley rolled out beneath them in the moonlight, Ethan stopped again. The silence between them settled warm but full of unspoken questions. Ava wrapped her left arm around her waist, an old instinct. She could not hide the empty space where her right arm had been, but she could fold herself in a way that made her feel less exposed. Ethan noticed. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped closer. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her posture. Confused, she nodded. Ethan reached up with both hands and gently loosened her grip on herself, letting her arm fall naturally to her side. "You do not need to fold yourself in, not with me." His voice was soft but firm. Ava felt her heart squeeze. No one had ever said that to her. Most people pretended not to notice her attempts at shrinking, or worse, silently agreed she should. She turned slightly so he could not read every expression on her face. "Ethan, can I ask you something? Anything? Why did you come?" "Not because I asked, not because it was convenient. Why did you actually come?" His breath left him in a slow exhale, as though he had been waiting for that question. When he answered, his voice carried a weight she had not heard before. I came because I wanted to see you in a world that never saw you properly. Ava blinked, startled. Ethan continued. You told me once you hated weddings because people looked at you like you were broken, like your story was already over. I wanted to show you that your story is nowhere near finished and that you are not broken. She swallowed hard. Ethan looked out toward the moonlit valley as if gathering something inside him. There is something else you should know, something I never said on LumenLink. Ava braced herself, irrational fear tightening her chest. Was he married? Was he sick? Was this all pity after all? Ethan turned back to her, his eyes steady and vulnerable, in a way that made her heart thud against her ribs. My company, Ward Biotech, did not start because I wanted to get rich. It started because of my sister. Ava's breath stilled. She had never heard him mention a sibling. Ethan continued, his voice low. My little sister was 10 when she lost her leg to bone cancer. We were very close. I was 16. I watched her struggle with mobility devices that were either outdated or painful or designed by people who had never listened to someone like her. It made me angry enough to build something better. A lump formed in Ava's throat. So you created the company for her? Ethan nodded. And for people like her. People who deserved dignity, not sympathy. People who deserved real solutions, not temporary fixes. Ava looked down, her voice trembling. Why did you never tell me that? He smiled gently. I did not want you to think I saw you through a lens of charity, or that your attraction to me was tied to something I created for someone else. I wanted us to be just us, not your missing arm, not my company's purpose, just you and me talking on quiet nights about everything and nothing. Ava felt the tears forming before she could hold them back. Ethan stepped closer, slow enough that she could have pulled away. She did not. His hand rose, hesitated near her cheek, then touched her gently, thumb, brushing the tear slipping down. Ava, I do not see you as less. I never have. Her lip trembled. I am afraid, she whispered. I know. His voice was warm and steady. But fear does not make you unworthy. It makes you human. A soft laugh escaped her, broken but honest. She lifted her gaze to meet his. Why me? Ethan inhaled deeply, his eyes softening in a way that made her stomach flutter. Because you are the only person who talks to me like I am just a man. Because you see the world with a kind of resilience I have never known. Because when I talk to you, everything feels real in a way I cannot explain. His voice dropped lower. And because when I look at you, Ava Lawson, I see someone brave in ways she does not even realize. The vulnerability in his words wrapped around her like a warm blanket, grounding her in place. She opened her mouth to speak, but the sound of footsteps and laughter drifted toward them from the courtyard. Guests were approaching, calling Ethan's name again. He let out a quiet sigh, reluctant. We should head back. But Ava grabbed his hand before he could step away. Ethan, he looked down at their intertwined fingers, then back at her. Yes, she whispered, barely audible. I do not want tonight to end. His answer was immediate and certain. Neither do I. And for the first time in years, Ava felt something she had forgotten how to feel. Hope. Amber Lawson had always been the twin who shone first. She was the one teachers praised, the one relatives boasted about, the one strangers gravitated toward without understanding why. Even tonight, in her designer lace gown, surrounded by friends and family, she had expected to be the center of every gaze. But as the evening unfolded, Amber watched something shift in the room. Conversations that had once circled around her wedding details now drifted toward the mysterious billionaire who had arrived on Ava's arm. Whispers swarmed like bees around a bright flower. Did you see how he looked at her? Why would someone like him choose someone like Ava? Are they really together? And the question Amber hated most yet, heard most often, which twin is the bride again? The question stung her pride in a way she was not prepared to admit. She had expected to feel happy for Ava in the vaguely patronizing way older siblings often do when the younger one gets a rare moment of luck. But this was different. This was seismic. It was not Ava having a pleasant evening. It was Ava becoming the center of attention in a place Amber never thought she would. And Amber, even with her beauty charm and the wedding spotlight, felt eclipsed. A knot twisted in her stomach. Not hatred, not cruelty. Just something rawer, more complicated. Something she did not have the emotional vocabulary to name. She spotted Ava across the courtyard, standing close to Ethan, near the lantern-lit path that led into the vines. They looked like a scene from a movie, their silhouettes soft in the golden light, their heads inclined toward each other in a way that spoke of trust and emotional weight. Amber's throat tightened. That should have been her moment, her dream, her perfect story. Instead, she watched it belong to her sister. A bridesmaid approached Amber with a barely restrained grin. "I cannot believe Ava is with Ethan Ward. Like actually with him." Amber forced a small laugh. "I know, crazy, right?" The bridesmaid leaned closer. "Do you think it is real?" Amber hesitated. She did not want to sound petty. She did not want to sound jealous, but she also did not believe the relationship was fully real. Ava had never mentioned dating someone serious, and the idea that her shy one-armed sister had captivated a billionaire seemed unrealistic. Amber lifted a shoulder. "I think Ava is overwhelmed. I mean, it is a lot for her." The bridesmaid nodded sympathetically. "Poor thing. Life must already be hard enough for her." Amber felt a small pang of guilt at the phrasing. She did not want her sister pitied. She just wanted clarity, understanding, some sort of explanation for this new dynamic she had not prepared for. After a few more guests congratulated her on the wedding, Amber excused herself quietly. She slipped behind a row of tall floral arrangements, pulling her phone from a small clutch. She hesitated. Then she typed swiftly into a search bar. Ethan Ward scandal. Nothing meaningful came up. Just old articles about achievements, charity work, stock fluctuation. Nothing that explained why a man like him would be here with Ava. Amber bit her lower lip. She hated not understanding things. She hated surprises. She hated not being in control of a narrative. That was when a bridesmaid leaned close again, voice low. "If you really want to know more about him, I know a company. They do background checks for high-profile clients. Cheap, fast, no fuss." Amber should have said no. It was her wedding night. It was inappropriate. It was invasive. But in her mind, she told herself a different story. She was just protecting her sister, ensuring that Ava was not being used, ensuring that Ava's fragile heart, already cracked from years of insecurity, would not be shattered by a man who might only be playing a part. She convinced herself she was doing the right thing. She opened the link the bridesmaid sent her. The website was clinical, simple, and far too easy to use. Amber typed Ethan's name. She paid without thinking twice. Within minutes, a message appeared. "Report will arrive shortly." A stone settled in her stomach. She suddenly felt cold. Minutes later, as Amber rejoined the party, her phone buzzed. She slipped it open discreetly. The report was brief, vague, something about a lab incident, something about allegations, something about unresolved internal disputes within Ward Biotech. Nothing confirmed, nothing criminal, but enough to spark unease, enough to weaponize as gossip. Amber's mind raced. She did not want to hurt Ava. She just wanted to tease her, make light fun, nothing serious. But in her anxious, jealous haze, she approached a cluster of guests near the wine bar. They quieted as she drew near. Amber forced a bright smile. "Oh, I heard something strange about Ethan. Probably nothing. But did you know there was some kind of lab controversy connected to him? Maybe I misunderstood. Just thought it was interesting." The guests leaned in, intrigued. The rumor traveled faster than Amber expected. Within half an hour, she overheard snippets of her own words repeated with more dramatic flair. Something about a cover-up. Something about an accident. Something about a scandal. She froze. This was not what she wanted. She wanted curiosity, not chaos. Teasing, not trouble. But gossip like wildfire did not obey its spark. Amber tried to backtrack, to downplay it, but the whispers had already grown too wide to contain. She pressed her palms to her temples. What have I done? She spotted Ava across the courtyard again, still with Ethan, still glowing in a way Amber had never seen her glow. A painful mixture of guilt and envy twisted in her chest. "I just wanted to understand," she whispered to herself. "I did not want to hurt you." She did not yet know the worst part. The report she received had been sent twice. Once to her, and due to a clerical error by the investigative company, once to Marcus Steele. Marcus, the disgraced scientist who had once worked under Ethan. The man who still blamed Ethan for every failure in his life. The man who had been waiting for a weakness to exploit. Amber did not realize that by trying to uncover Ethan's past, she had accidentally fed the wrong man exactly what he needed. She thought she was protecting Ava, but in her longing to stay relevant in a world suddenly not revolving around her, she had placed her sister in danger she could not yet imagine. Ava sensed something was wrong the moment they returned to the courtyard. The air felt heavier, conversations sharper, eyes more curious than before. She could feel the shift, the way attention had turned into scrutiny, the way whispers no longer floated harmlessly, but carried a darker edge. Ethan's hand was still resting lightly against her back, guiding her through the crowd. But even his touch felt different now, more protective, more alert. They had barely taken a few steps when a pair of guests brushed past, speaking in hushed tones. They probably assumed Ethan would not hear. "I told you there was trouble in his labs. My cousin said someone almost died. If that is true, he should not be walking around like nothing happened." Ava's stomach lurched. She stopped instinctively, turning toward the voices, but they had already disappeared into the sea of guests. Ethan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He glanced down at her, his expression composed, but shadowed by something she had not seen before. "Do not mind them," he murmured. "People like to pretend they know things they do not." Ava tried to smile. She tried to brush it off. But as they made their way back toward their table, more glances followed them, more whispers, snatches of phrases that made her chest tighten. Lab accident, company cover-up, dangerous. Ava forced herself to breathe one quiet inhale at a time. She did not want to react. She did not want to make a scene. But the unease simmered beneath her skin, like a bruise being pressed repeatedly. When they reached the table, Ethan pulled out her chair. She sat down stiffly, her breath caught in her throat. Ethan sat beside her, his posture relaxed on the surface but taut underneath. Ava kept her gaze on the napkin in her lap, twisting the corner between her fingers as she tried to gather her courage. "Ethan," she began softly, voice trembling despite her efforts, "is there something going on I should know about?" He turned toward her slowly, his gray eyes serious. "About what?" Before she could answer, a man at the next table leaned over, voice dripping with the kind of faux concern that was worse than open hostility. I could not help overhearing. "Tough situation, huh? Hard to trust a company after something like that." Ethan's shoulders stiffened. Ava's pulse hammered. The man continued casually, as though discussing the weather. "I heard some of the blame fell on you. Something about negligence. Maybe I am wrong. Just what people are saying." Ethan's expression cooled into something Ava had never seen. Directed at anyone but always admired in him. Controlled power, calculated restraint. He turned his head, voice quiet but icy. "You should be careful repeating things you do not understand." The man faltered, muttered an apology, and retreated. But the damage was done. Ava's heart pounded in her ears. She looked at Ethan, her voice barely audible. "Is any of this true?" Ethan inhaled slowly, exhaling as if steadying himself. "Ava, this is not the time or the place." Her breath caught. "So it is true." She hated how fragile her voice sounded, how small she felt. Ethan rubbed his forehead. "It is complicated." Complicated sounded like an excuse. Complicated sounded like avoidance. Complicated sounded like the beginning of heartbreak, and Ava felt her chest cave in under the weight of it. "You told me I could trust you," she whispered, eyes burning. "You asked me to." "You have my trust," Ethan said, voice tight. "But that does not mean my entire life can be explained in an instant, especially in the middle of this. People are spreading rumors, dangerous ones, about you, about your work, and you will not tell me anything." His eyes flickered with frustration, not at her but at everything surrounding them. "It is not that I will not tell you, it is that I cannot tell you here. Then why is everyone talking about it like they know more than I do?" Ethan hesitated. That pause sliced into her more sharply than any rumor could. Ava felt her balance wobble. She pushed back her chair, struggling to stand with the trembling in her legs. "I need a minute." "Ava, wait." He reached for her, but she stepped away. She made it only a few steps before Amber intercepted her face, pale with worry and guilt she had not yet confessed. "Are you okay?" Ava shook her head. "Not now, please." She turned toward the edge of the courtyard, walking as fast as she could without drawing more attention. Behind her she heard Ethan mutter something under his breath and stand up as if to follow. But someone stopped him. No one knew who. A man asking a question, a woman blocking his path, someone demanding a moment of his time. Ava did not look back. She reached the far edge of the courtyard near the vineyard, where lanterns cast long shadows across the gravel path. Only then did she let herself breathe. Her heart was tearing itself apart from the inside. She had not expected perfection from Ethan. She had not expected simplicity. She had spent her entire life knowing things were messy, broken, complicated. But she had hoped for truth, for honesty, for the one man she trusted more than anyone to be real with her. Her breath shook as she stared out into the rows of vines. A soft wind carried the faint sounds of the celebration behind her, but she felt miles away from it all. Footsteps crunched lightly behind her. She turned, half hoping it was Ethan, half terrified it was. But it was Amber. Her sister looked stricken eyes glossy with unshed tears. "Ava, I need to tell you something." Ava wiped her cheek quickly with her sleeve. "Not now." Amber stepped closer. "Please. It is important." Ava shook her head. "I cannot do this, not tonight. I cannot handle being your pity project, or your comparison point, or whatever you think I am." Amber flinched as if slapped. "That is not what you are." Ava closed her eyes. "Then what am I?" Amber's breath caught, and for a moment she looked younger, vulnerable, stripped of the bride's glow and polish. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "I did something stupid. I did not mean for it to get this big." Something cold slithered through Ava's spine. "What did you do?" Amber opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. Her voice finally cracked. "I started the rumor. I only meant it as small talk, as a joke. I did not know it would spread like this. I swear I did not." Ava stumbled backward, as though Amber had physically pushed her. Her pulse roared. "You did this." Her voice was thin, strangled. "You?" Amber nodded, tears spilling now. Ava shook her head, breath shattering in her chest. "I trusted you. I trusted both of you. And now I do not know who to believe." She spun away, unable to look at either her sister or the wedding behind her. Somewhere in the distance, through the noise and lights, she saw Ethan searching the crowd for her. But she could not move toward him. She could not move toward anyone. Because for the first time that night, she felt completely, utterly alone. Marcus Steele had always believed the world owed him something. Recognition, respect, power. He had once been a rising star in Ward Biotech, charismatic and brilliant, in the way that impressed investors but unsettled lab workers. His confidence had bordered on arrogance, and his ambition often outpaced his ethics. Ethan had given him countless chances, far more than Marcus ever deserved. But when Marcus cut corners on a critical experiment and nearly cost a patient their life during a prosthetic trial, the board had demanded accountability. Marcus blamed Ethan for everything that followed: the termination, the industry blacklist, the ruined reputation, the slow collapse of his career, until he was reduced to consulting gigs no one reputable would touch. So when the email arrived earlier that evening at his temporary office in Santa Rosa, Marcus almost ignored it. A background report with Ethan's name in the subject line. For a moment he assumed it was spam, but curiosity drove him to open it. The report was brief, but enough to light gasoline over the resentment he had been nursing for years. He read it 3 times, his pulse pounding a grin, stretching slowly across his face. So there was a rumor resurfacing about the incident in Ward Biotech. A rumor that implicated Ethan. A rumor that would make people question Ethan's competence, his leadership, his legacy. Marcus leaned back in his creaking office chair, fingers steepled, eyes gleaming. Interesting, very interesting. He scrolled again, noticing the sender's error. The report had been forwarded twice. Once to someone named Amber Lawson, and once to him. Marcus had no idea who Amber was, or why she wanted the report. But he knew this someone at that wedding had started talking. Someone had given him the spark he needed. And Marcus was ready to burn Ethan's entire world down. He grabbed his keys, slipping them into the pocket of his leather jacket. Santa Rosa was barely 15 minutes from the luxury vineyards of Sonoma Valley. He could be there quickly, quietly, and blend into the crowd long enough to get what he wanted. He drove with the headlights off down the quiet roads until he reached a field just beyond the vineyard's property line. He parked beneath a cluster of oaks, stepping out into the warm night. The distant hum of music carried through the valley, a cheerful sound that grated against the bitterness simmering in his veins. Marcus made his way toward a back fence, easily climbing over the wooden slats. The vineyard stretched beneath the moonlight rows of grapevines swaying lightly in the breeze. He kept to the shadows, his steps silent on the soft dirt, as he moved closer to the glowing courtyard where the wedding was underway. When he reached a rise behind the venue, he crouched low and observed. And then he saw her, Ava Lawson, standing near the edge of the courtyard's shoulders, hunched, her single arm gripping her dress as she tried to hold herself together. She was alone, fighting back tears. She looked small, vulnerable, overwhelmed. Marcus recognized vulnerability instantly. It was an opportunity. His mind worked quickly. This woman mattered to Ethan. He could see it in the way Ethan scanned the crowd, frantic searching for her. He could hear it in the faint pieces of conversation floating across the courtyard. So that is his girlfriend. Poor thing. I heard she stormed off. Ethan looked upset. Marcus watched Ethan with sharp interest. The way the billionaire's chest rose too quickly, the tension running through his shoulders, the fear in his eyes. Marcus inhaled slowly. There it was. Ethan Ward had a weakness, and she was standing alone in the dark. Marcus stepped back into the shadows, his lips curling into a predatory smile. Perfect. He waited until Ava moved away from the courtyard, wandering toward the darker side of the vineyard. Her walk was unsteady, her breath shaking, one hand brushing away tears. She looked like someone fleeing without knowing where she was going, driven by pain and confusion. Marcus followed at a distance, keeping silent, slipping between rows, staying downwind, hugging the shadows like a ghost. When Ava reached a small clearing near the back parking area, she paused. She wrapped her arm around her waist again, breathing shakily, staring at the ground as if trying to steady herself. She whispered to no one, voice cracking, "Why does everything fall apart the moment I start to hope?" Marcus stepped closer, not yet revealing himself, observing the way she shook, the way grief made her chest collapse forward. In her pain, he saw opportunity. In her fear, he saw leverage. In her isolation, he saw a way to punish Ethan in a way no corporate scandal ever could. Marcus knew Ethan cared too deeply, too personally, to let this woman be harmed, which meant harming her would hurt Ethan far more than any headline or rumor ever could. His voice carried softly through the vines. "You look lost." Ava stiffened, turning quickly. Her eyes were wide and wet, reflecting the dim glow of distant lanterns. She took an instinctive step back. "Who is there?" Marcus stepped forward slowly, hands raised in a gesture of peace he did not mean. "Sorry, I did not mean to scare you. Are you okay?" She blinked, confused and vulnerable. I needed." Marcus nodded sympathetically, masking the intensity in his gaze. Weddings can be overwhelming, especially when people talk. Ava tensed. "What do you mean?" Marcus tilted his head. "Just that sometimes guests say things they do not understand. Rumors can be cruel." Her breath hitched, confirming she had heard the whispers. Marcus pretended to look regretful. "I heard some things tonight about Ethan." Her eyes widened. "What did you hear?" Marcus sighed, choosing each word as carefully as a surgeon choosing a blade. "Enough to know you should be careful." Ava's skin drained of color. Marcus stepped 1 inch closer. "Ethan is not who you think he is." The lie slid easily from his tongue. Ava stumbled back, shaking her head. "No, The pain in her voice told Marcus he had struck exactly the wound he needed. Before he could push further, a flash of movement caught his eye. Ethan stepped out from behind the vines several rows away, panic written across his face as he searched for Ava. Marcus stiffened. Not yet, not in the open. He vanished backward into the shadows of the vines gone, before Ava even realized someone had been standing with her at all. Ethan found her seconds later, calling her name breathless and terrified. But from the darkness, Marcus watched them both, a smile twitching at the corner of his mouth. He had seen enough to know exactly where to strike next. Tonight had given him everything he needed. A broken sister, a fractured relationship, a crack wide enough to crawl through. And Ava Lawson, trembling in the dark, had no idea she had just been marked. The night air in Sonoma Valley had cooled into a gentle breeze, carrying the scent of grapes and freshly watered soil. But Ava felt none of its calm. Her chest still ached from the argument, the rumor, Amber's confession, and the strange man's unsettling presence among the vines. She had not told Ethan about the stranger. She could barely process anything herself. After Ethan found her near the courtyard, he tried to speak, his voice low and urgent, but she could not bring herself to face him. Not fully. Not yet. Not with the storm inside her. "I need some time, Ethan," she whispered, stepping back when he reached for her hand. "Please." His expression cracked with hurt, but he nodded, giving her the space she asked for, even though every part of him looked like it was begging to pull her close. "I will be right here," he said softly. "I am not going anywhere." Ava managed a small nod, then turned and headed toward the side path that led to the guest parking lot. She needed quiet. She needed calm. She needed to breathe without the weight of two worlds pressing on her. Her heels clicked unevenly against the gravel as she walked down. The dimly lit path beside the vineyard rose. Lanterns spaced far apart cast long shadows that swayed with the breeze, turning the vines into tall, shifting figures. Ava wrapped her arm around her waist, staring down at the ground as she tried to steady her breath. Her phone buzzed with a message from Amber, an apology that began with, "I know I do not deserve forgiveness, but..." Ava turned the screen over without reading the rest. She stepped into the parking area, a gravel lot on the edge of the property, bordered by old oak trees. Most guests were still at the wedding, so the lot was quiet and mostly empty, except for a scattering of cars. She reached her small, older sedan tucked beneath a tree. When she opened the door, her keys slipped from her trembling hand and fell between the seat and the console. Ava groaned softly, bending to reach for them. That was when she heard it, a crunch of gravel behind her, soft, steady, intentional. She froze slowly, lifting her head. A figure stepped out from the shadows beneath the trees. Not Ethan, not a guest. Him, the man from the vines, the stranger with the too smooth voice and the eyes that watched her too closely. Her pulse spiked. She took a small step back, heart hammering. "You again," she whispered. Marcus Steele smiled slowly, stepping closer, the dim light catching the edge of his sneer. "You wandered off alone. Not smart." Ava's breath caught in her throat. She reached for her phone, but Marcus moved faster, his hand snapping out to grip her wrist tightly. She gasped in pain. "Let go of me." Marcus pulled her closer, his voice low and dripping with cruelty. "You know Ethan ruined my life, took everything from me. I think it's only fair I take something from him." Ava jerked her arm free and stumbled backward. Her heel caught on the gravel, and she barely managed to stay upright. She wanted to scream, but fear strangled her voice. Marcus stepped toward her again, eyes sharp. You should not have been alone. Ava forced herself to move, spinning on her heel and running toward the courtyard, but Marcus lunged his hand, gripping the back of her dress. The fabric tore slightly as she fought against him. Her breath came in harsh gasps. Let go! She twisted, kicking out with her leg. Her foot connected with his shin, surprising him enough that his grip faltered. Ava stumbled free, taking 3 desperate steps before Marcus caught her again, one hand gripping her left arm, the other clamping around her waist. She fought wildly despite her disadvantage, headbutting him hard. Marcus cursed, shoving her against the hood of a nearby SUV. Her cheek smacked metal, and stars burst behind her eyes. She tried to scream, but Marcus's palm slapped over her mouth. He leaned in close, his breath hot and venomous. Hurting you destroys him, and I want him destroyed. Ava thrashed, mustering every ounce of strength, every ounce of fury accumulated from years of pity, judgment, and fear. With one arm she twisted her body hard, slamming her elbow into Marcus's ribs. He hissed and lost his grip for a split second. Ava bolted again, but she only made it a few feet before the second man emerged from behind, a row of trees blocking her path. He was broad-shouldered, wearing dark clothing, and carried the unmistakable posture of a hired thug. She skidded to a halt, heart-dropping. Marcus's voice behind her was a low, satisfied growl. Bring her. The thug reached for her. Ava screamed through her tears, twisting her body, and kicking upward, catching him in the knee. He grunted, anger flashing, and grabbed her harder, hauling her off the ground. Marcus approached, straightening his jacket, breathing hard. Enough, we are done playing. Ava fought like a wildfire, her legs kicking, her voice raw, but it did not matter. The thug carried her toward a dark van parked at the far edge of the lot. Marcus opened the sliding door, revealing a dimly lit interior with rope zip ties and duct tape tossed haphazardly across the seats. Ava's blood turned cold. No, no, please. Marcus grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. You should blame Ethan for this, not me. He nodded to the thug. Get her in. Ava screamed a scream that pierced the quiet vineyard night, like an alarm ripping through silence. Back at the courtyard, Ethan's head snapped up instantly. He had been pacing near the dance floor, searching for Ava in every shadow. But that scream, he recognized it instantly. Ava. The sound tore through him, ripping instinct to the surface. He ran, past guests, past servers, past Amber, calling after him with a trembling voice. Ethan sprinted down the side path, his chest burning, his feet barely touching the ground. He reached the parking lot just as the van door slammed shut. He saw a glimpse of Ava struggling inside. Her terrified eyes found his. Ethan. Her voice cracked in sheer panic. Ethan lunged forward, but the van roared to life, tires spinning on gravel as it shot backward, then peeled out of the lot, heading toward the back road between the vines. Ethan stumbled, but regained his footing. Ava. His voice broke, vibrating with fury and terror. He sprinted to his own car, fumbling with his keys, hands shaking. But when he reached the driver's door, he saw something glint on the ground. Ava's necklace, the one she always fumbled with, the one she could not clasp alone. Ethan picked it up with trembling hands. His breath shattered. In that moment, Ethan Ward vowed one thing with absolute certainty. He would bring her back, whatever it cost. Ethan drove like a man, possessed, tires skidding across the winding vineyard road. as he sped after the taillights disappearing into the darkness. His vision tunneled, every thought sharpened into a single primal instinct: reach Ava. Nothing else mattered. Not the wedding behind him, not the rumors, not the stunned guests who had watched him sprint into the night. Ethan's jaw clenched so hard, his teeth ached as he floored the accelerator. He replayed her scream in his head, each echo slicing deeper into his chest. He had promised her he would not go anywhere. And now she was somewhere he could not reach fast enough. Not yet. The road narrowed between rows of grapevines, illuminated only by his headlights, and the faint glow of dust kicked up by the fleeing van. He pushed the car harder, faster. His hand shook around the steering wheel. He could not lose her. Not after everything. Not after the way she had looked at him on the dance floor. Not after she had begun to trust him. Suddenly, the van swerved off the main path toward an abandoned storage warehouse on the far edge of the vineyard property. Ethan recognized it immediately. It was old, boarded up around the sides, and mostly used by vineyard workers for equipment. The perfect place for someone like Marcus to vanish with someone defenseless. The van skidded to a stop outside the large rusted doors. Ethan did not wait for it to fully park. He slammed on his brakes, leapt out of the car before the wheels even stopped turning, and sprinted toward the warehouse. A harsh cry echoed from inside. Ava! Ethan's heart nearly ripped out of his chest. He shoved the side entrance door with his full weight. It barely budged. He stepped back, then kicked again harder, slamming his shoulder against the wood. On the third hit, the latch splintered and gave way. The door flew open, and Ethan stumbled inside. The interior was dim-lit, only by a flickering fluorescent bulb overhead. Shadows stretched across the concrete floor. Ethan's breath turned to fire in his lungs as he searched for her. Then he saw her, Ava, on the ground, hands zip-tied, cheeks scraped, dress torn at the hem. Tears streaked down her face. She looked terrified but alive. Ethan's vision blurred with rage. Marcus stood a few feet away, a metal tool in his hand. Steps poised to close the distance between himself and Ava again. Ethan's voice dropped into a terrifying quiet. Step away from her. Marcus smirked. So the king arrives. I wondered how long it would take. Ethan's hands curled into fists. You touch her again, and I swear Marcus laughed. You did this to yourself, Ward. You made enemies. You played the hero too long. This is what happens when you pretend you can save everyone. Ethan took a step forward, his chest rising sharply. Let her go. Marcus cocked his head. She matters to you, does she not? The way you ran, the way you look at her. The weakness was right there. All I had to do was reach out. Ethan lunged. Marcus swung the metal tool, but Ethan dodged, grabbing Marcus by the collar and slamming him into a stack of crates. They crashed to the floor. Marcus gasped, swinging again, the tool grazing Ethan's arm. Ethan grunted from the pain, but did not stop. His mind was locked on Ava's trembling sob behind him. Marcus twisted, slipping free, and staggered backward. He hurled a wrench toward Ethan's face. Ethan ducked. The wrench clanged against a metal shelf. Marcus grabbed a loose board and swung it wildly. Ethan caught it mid-swing, ripped it from his hands, and threw it aside. Marcus scrambled backward, reaching for something on the ground, but Ethan crashed into him, tackling him to the floor. Fists flew, pain burst through skin. Ethan's knuckles split. Marcus's lip tore. They rolled across the concrete, struggling for leverage. Ethan finally pinned Marcus beneath him, forearm shoved against Marcus's throat. You will never hurt her again. Marcus choked out a laugh. She is already hurt. Ethan pressed harder. I am warning you. Marcus's smirk grew darker. You should have told her the truth. Ava's breath caught. Ethan froze. His blood ran cold. Marcus sneered. She came to you broken, and you could not even give her honesty. Guess you are not as noble as she thinks. That single sentence cracked something inside Ethan. Marcus used the hesitation to shove him away, scrambling to his feet, but Ethan rose just as fast. His chest heaved. His voice dropped into a deadly calm. I am done giving you second chances. He drove his fist into Marcus's jaw with violent precision. Marcus stumbled backward, crashing into a pile of crates. The impact knocked him unconscious. The warehouse fell silent except for Ethan's ragged breathing. He turned immediately. Ava. She sat trembling against a crate, zip-tied hands held tightly to her chest. Her eyes were wide and wet, her cheek bruised. Ethan rushed to her side, dropping to his knees so fast the concrete scraped them raw. Ava. Oh God, Ava. He reached for her hands but stopped inches away, terrified of hurting her more. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? Her voice shook. Ethan. He quickly pulled a pocket knife from his jacket. Hands trembling and carefully cut the zip ties. The moment her hands were free, she curled into him, sobbing. Ethan wrapped his arms around her, gently pressing her head to his chest. His voice cracked as he whispered, I am here. I am here. I am so sorry. I should have protected you. I failed you. She shook her head against him. You came for me. Her words shattered him. Ethan held her closer, his body trembling from adrenaline and fear. He pressed his forehead to her temple, breathing her in. I thought I lost you. I thought I was too late. Ava lifted her head, her eyes swollen and shimmering with tears. Why did he say you did not tell me the truth? Ethan closed his eyes. His chest tightened painfully. He had wanted to shield her from everything tonight, from gossip from his past, from the dark corners of his world. But keeping her in the dark had cost them both. Ethan cupped her cheek, gently thumb brushing over the faint bruise. There was a lab accident years ago, he whispered. Marcus was responsible, but the media twisted it. They blamed me. And instead of forcing you to confront that tonight, I tried to hide it. I did not want you to think I was dangerous. Ava's voice was barely a breath. I would have trusted you. Ethan's heart fractured. I know. And I should have trusted you with the truth. She looked down, voice trembling. I was scared when I heard the rumors. I did not want to believe them. I just did not know what was real. Ethan tipped her chin gently until her eyes met his. This is real. You are real. And I will never hide from you again. Her lips parted, breath shaking. Ethan leaned in, slowly giving her every chance to pull away. She did not. Their foreheads touched first, warm and trembling. Then Ethan whispered, I cannot lose you, Ava Lawson. She whispered back, you will not. Their lips met in a kiss that stole what little breath either of them had left. It was not a perfect kiss. It was raw, shaking, desperate. A kiss born from fear-relief and the violent realization that they needed one another more than either had admitted. When they finally pulled apart, Ava leaned her forehead against his. Ethan exhaled shakily. Let me take you home. Let me take care of you. Ava nodded, and Ethan lifted her into his arms as rescue sirens approached the warehouse, bathing the night in flashes of red and white. But all Ethan saw was her, alive, safe, and in his arms. The hospital room was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines and the muted glow of early dawn slipping through half-closed blinds. Sonoma Valley slept outside, unaware of the chaos that had unfolded hours earlier. Ava sat upright on the hospital bed, wrapped in a blanket a nurse had tucked around her. Her hair was tousled, her cheek lightly bruised, but she was awake and alive. Ethan sat beside her, one hand gently resting over hers, thumb tracing slow grounding circles on her skin. His suit jacket lay folded on a chair, his dress shirt smeared with dirt, and streaks of dried blood on the sleeve from the fight with Marcus. He looked exhausted, but his eyes fixed on her were bright with fierce relief. Ava watched him quietly for a moment. He had not left her side since the ambulance arrived. He had paced while the EMTs evaluated her, argued with a doctor who tried to take him out of the room during triage, and nearly broke down when she squeezed his hand to let him know she was strong enough to speak. Now he sat so still she could feel the tension in his shoulders. "Ethan," she whispered. He lifted his head instantly as though afraid he might miss a single word. "Yes, you need to breathe." His exhale trembled. "I will breathe when I am certain you are safe." She gave a soft, shaky smile. "I am safe because of you." His jaw tightened. "Because I was too slow. Because I let something come between us that should never have come between us." His voice rasped with regret. "If I had stayed closer, if I had followed you sooner." He broke off, eyes glistening, staring at their intertwined hands, as if afraid she might disappear. Ava squeezed his fingers. "Ethan, this is not your fault. Marcus chose violence. Amber made a mistake. Rumors spread. But what happened to me, none of it is on you." Ethan shook his head. "I should have protected you." Ava studied him, taking in the small cuts on his face, the tension rippling under his skin. "You did. You fought for me. You came for me. That is what matters." Ethan swallowed hard, looking away for a moment. When he looked back at her, his voice was low. "I thought I lost you tonight." And that fear, it was worse than anything I have ever experienced. She leaned closer, pressing her forehead gently to his. He closed his eyes at the contact. "I am right here, Ethan. I am not going anywhere." Before Ethan could answer, a soft knock sounded at the door. Ethan's head snapped up, protective instinct flaring shoulders, tensing as if ready for another threat. But it was Amber. She stood in the doorway, wearing a wrinkled robe over her wedding dress mascara, smudged from hours of tears. Her hands clutched the doorframe as though she did not trust her own legs. "Ava," her voice cracked. Can I come in?" Ava hesitated, the weight of betrayal still fresh. Ethan glanced at her silently, asking whether she wanted him to intervene. She shook her head. Amber stepped inside, slowly, her gaze falling to her sister's bruised cheek. Her breath hitched, and her knees buckled slightly as she crossed the room. "I am so sorry, Ava. I am so sorry." Her voice was raw. "This is all my fault, all of it." Ava swallowed, unsure whether she had the emotional strength to deal with her sister's guilt. But Amber pressed on, tears spilling over her lashes. "I did not know the rumor would spread. I did not know the report would reach someone else. I did not know Marcus existed. I swear I did not. I was jealous. I was stupid. I wanted to feel in control of something. I never meant for any of this to happen." Amber's chest heaved as she wiped her tears with trembling hands. "I should have celebrated you. I should have defended you your entire life, but I let people treat you like you were less. I joined them sometimes. I regret it more than anything I have ever done." She looked down, unable to meet Ava's gaze. "You almost died because of me. I will never forgive myself for that." Ava felt tears rising in her own eyes, not because of the apology itself, but because she could hear the truth in Amber's voice. The fear, the regret, the love buried beneath layers of insecurity. Amber approached the bed slowly. "I understand if you hate me, if you never want to speak to me again." Ava shook her head softly. "You are my sister. I could never hate you." Amber crumpled in relief, covering her mouth with trembling fingers. Ava continued quietly but honestly. "You hurt me, deeply. You made me feel small for years. You made me doubt my worth when the world already doubted it enough." Amber nodded, tears falling faster. "I know, and if you let me, I want to be better. I want to be someone you can rely on." Ava exhaled shakily. She glanced at Ethan, who gave her a small nod of encouragement. Ava turned back to Amber. "Maybe we can grow. Together." Amber broke into sobs and leaned forward to hug her sister, carefully mindful of her injuries. Ava let herself be held, feeling her sister's tears soak into her shoulder. For the first time in years, Amber held her with sincerity rather than performance. When Amber finally pulled back, she wiped her face, sniffing. "I cannot believe you found someone like him." She jerked her head toward Ethan. "He is—" She gestured helplessly, clearly struggling to describe him. Ava smiled softly. "I know." Ethan cleared his throat, slightly embarrassed. He stepped closer to the bed, straightening instinctively. Amber looked at him, then really looked at him, seeing something she had not recognized before. Love, raw, fierce, unshakable. "I owe you everything," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "You owe me nothing. Just be there for your sister." Amber nodded. "I will, always." A nurse peeked in to check on Ava, and Amber stepped aside, giving Ava's hand one last squeeze before slipping from the room. When the door clicked shut, Ethan returned to Ava's side, sitting gently on the edge of the bed. His voice was softer now, but no less intense. "Ava, I want you to know something." Ava looked up. "Yes." Ethan took her hand, threading his fingers through hers with quiet reverence. "I am not leaving, not tomorrow, not next month, not when things get complicated. I am here because I want a future with you." Her breath caught. A future. The word vibrated through her. Ethan leaned in close, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "You are the bravest woman I have ever met. And I want to build something with you, something real." Ava felt warmth bloom in her chest, a warmth stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. Ethan helped her sit back against the pillows. After a long moment, she whispered, "What happens now?" Ethan smiled, brushing a thumb across her cheek. "Now we heal. Together." And for the first time since the night began, Ava let herself believe it. Her future did not have to be a shadow. It could begin right here, with him. The summer sun dipped low over Sonoma Valley, bathing the vineyards in a warm golden glow that shimmered across every row of ripening grapes. The same estate that once hosted Amber's extravagant wedding was transformed again, but the aura felt different this time. Softer, warmer, more intentional. It was smaller, more intimate, filled with faces who knew Ava's story, who had stood by her through chaos and healing, who had watched her find her voice again after years of shrinking herself to fit into the narrow spaces people allowed her. The breeze carried the faint scent of roses and oak lifting strands of Ava's dark chestnut hair. Her wedding gown flowed around her like liquid silk, hugging her curves, moving with her breath. It was a gown she had designed herself, built to complement her body exactly as it was. the left sleeve draped elegantly over her remaining arm, while the right side flowed into a cascading cape, instead of a sleeve, a design choice that celebrated rather than concealed. Her prosthetic arm, specially crafted in collaboration with Ethan's biotech company, featured delicate engravings that shimmered like etched silver vines. It was not meant to hide her difference, it was meant to honor it. Amber stood behind her, adjusting the soft veil with careful hands. Ava watched their reflections in the mirror. Her older twin's smile trembled with emotion she no longer tried to hide. "You look like everything I never had the courage to become," Amber whispered, her voice cracking. Ava felt her eyes sting. Amber met her gaze in the mirror again. "For years I wanted to shine brighter than you, but I see now that your light was never competition. It was inspiration, and today I am beyond proud of you." Ava reached up gently to touch Amber's wrist. "Then let's shine together." Amber's eyes glistened as she nodded, pulling her into a soft embrace. A knock sounded at the door. Celeste, their cousin, and one of the bridesmaids peeked inside. "They are ready for you." A ripple of nerves fluttered in Ava's stomach. She took a steady breath as Amber reached for her bouquet. White garden roses mixed with eucalyptus and soft lavender. A scent she had chosen because it reminded her of peace after storms. As they stepped into the corridor, soft music drifted through the air. A string quartet began playing, a gentle arrangement, one that made Ava's heart expand inside her chest. Guests rose to their feet as she stepped into view. But unlike the wedding before, there were no whispers of pity, no lingering stares at her missing arm, no subtle glances filled with assumptions about her limitations. Instead, there were smiles warm and genuine, eyes shining with admiration, and tears glistening on faces of people who had witnessed her journey from brokenness to bravery. Ethan stood at the end of the aisle beneath a trellis of blooming white roses. His tailored suit fit him perfectly, but nothing could compare to the way he looked at her. His gray eyes softened the moment he saw her flooding with that familiar mix of awe and disbelief, as though he still could not quite comprehend that she was real and walking toward him, and toward their life. His breath visibly caught as she reached the beginning of the aisle. Ava paused for just a moment, taking everything in the breeze, brushing her shoulders, the birds flitting over the vines, the soft wine-colored horizon. Amber squeezed her hand once more before stepping aside to join the lineup of bridesmaids. Ava lifted her chin and began walking. Her gait was steady, graceful, owning every inch of ground beneath her feet. When she reached Ethan, he extended his hand, his fingers trembling slightly as they took hers. He whispered, barely audible, "You take my breath away." Ava smiled, her voice soft but unwavering. "Good, I plan to do that for the rest of our lives." The officiant began to speak, but the words blurred into the background as Ava and Ethan remained locked in their own quiet universe, their hands intertwined between them. Ethan's thumb brushed over the back of her hand in small, reverent circles, grounding her in the moment. When it came time for vows, Ethan inhaled deeply, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "Ava Lawson, you walked into my life quietly, through a simple message, through conversations that felt like home. But you shocked me more than anyone ever has. You showed me strength without bitterness, courage without hardness. You taught me that resilience can be gentle, and that love can be fearless." Ava felt tears prick behind her eyes, but she refused to look away from him. Ethan continued, his voice breaking slightly. I spent years building walls I thought would protect me. Then you stood in front of them, one arm, one heart whole, in ways no one else ever understood. And you didn't tear my walls down. You walked right through them, and I let you. Because you are the one person my heart recognized. Even before I ever saw your face, I vow to stand beside you, to lift you up, to cherish every inch of the woman you are. The woman who changed my entire world. His eyes shone as he whispered, "I love you more deeply than I ever thought possible." A hush fell over the guests. Then it was Ava's turn. She inhaled shakily, gathering the strength Ethan always seemed to bring out in her. You saw me when I could not see myself. When the world saw limitations, you saw possibilities. When I hid my arm, you held my hand. When I doubted my worth, you believed in me, with a certainty that terrified me and saved me and transformed me. Her voice wavered, but she kept going. I spent so long shrinking myself to survive. But with you, I learned I could grow. I learned I could be brave. I learned I could love without fear. She stepped closer, her eyes locked with his. I vow to walk beside you in every storm and every sunrise. I vow to choose you every day, the way you chose me. And I vow to keep building a life with you where neither of us ever has to pretend again. A tear slid down Ethan's cheek. Guests sniffled behind them. The officiant smiled gently. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Ethan cupped her face tenderly, pulling her into a kiss that was soft at first, then deepening with all the promise and devotion they had fought so hard for. The guests erupted into applause as they turned, hands still intertwined, walking back down the aisle together as husband and wife. Fireworks began igniting across the valley as twilight settled, painting the sky in bursts of silver and gold. Ava leaned into Ethan's side as they gazed upward, champagne flutes raised in celebration. "Do you ever think about that night?" Ava asked softly, watching the sky sparkle. Ethan chuckled, brushing his lips against her temple. "Every single day." She tilted her head to him. "Why?" He turned to her fully, his hand lifting to gently trace the engraved vines on her prosthetic arm. "Because that was the night I stopped living alone. The night my life stopped being an empire and became a story. Our story." Ava's breath hitched as he kissed her gently. Around them, laughter echoed through the vineyards. Champagne glasses clinked. Guests danced under strings of warm lights. The magic felt endless, like a dream she had once believed belonged to other people. But this time it belonged to her. Ethan took her hand and guided her toward the celebration, whispering, "Ready for the rest of forever." Ava nodded, her heart full, more than ready. As they stepped into the golden glow of their reception, surrounded by love and warmth, Ava knew one truth as deeply as she knew her own heartbeat. The girl who once sat alone at her sister's wedding had become a woman who would never walk alone again. Thank you so much for spending your time with Ava and Ethan's journey. A story that began with a quiet message on a screen and grew into a love that refused to break even under the weight of whispers, wounds, and the shadows of the past. If their story touched your heart even a little, I want to invite you to stay connected with us, because this channel is all about bringing you into worlds where love is raw, healing, emotional, and beautifully human. Here, every story is crafted with the intention of making you feel something real, whether that is a tear that sneaks down your cheek, a moment that makes you smile at your screen, or a heartbeat that quickens when two characters finally find their way to each other. So before you leave, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. It only takes a second, but it means the world, because it ensures you never miss the next love story waiting for you. And trust me, there is always another story waiting, a new heart, a new journey, a new character who might remind you of someone you once loved, or someone you hope to meet, or even someone you wish you could become. While you are here, I would love to know where you are watching from. One of my favorite parts of creating these stories is hearing from people all around the world. Whether you are listening from a small town in Texas, a big city like Chicago or Los Angeles, a quiet cabin in Montana, or somewhere across the ocean in Europe, Asia, Africa, or Australia, your voice matters here. So drop a comment below and tell me where you are joining us from. I read every comment, and I love seeing how far these stories travel. And of course, if you enjoyed this story, please give it a rating from 0 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps me shape each future story and lets me know what resonates most with you. Do you love billionaire romances? Do you love stories about resilience and healing? Do you enjoy twists, danger kidnappings, heartfelt confessions, or emotional reunions? Tell me. I want this space to grow with you, not just for you. If you feel moved to support the channel in a deeper way, you will find a donation link in the description below. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps us create better content, improve production, upgrade voiceovers, and continue telling stories that speak to the heart. Storytelling takes time, resources, energy, and love, and your support helps keep that magic alive. But even if you cannot donate right now, please know that just by being here, watching, commenting, and sharing your thoughts, you are already an essential part of this community. You make these stories breathe. You give them life. You make it possible for us to continue writing new tales that touch people across continents. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. As we close this chapter, I hope you carry a piece of Ava and Ethan with you. I hope their courage inspires yours, their healing reminds you of your own, and their love gives you hope for whatever comes next in your life. Because somewhere out there, your story is unfolding too. And just like Ava, who once believed she was invisible, you might discover that love is waiting for you in the most unexpected moment, in the most unexpected way. So subscribe, comment, like, share, support if you can. And most of all, keep coming back. Here your heart is welcome. Here your imagination can wander freely. And together we will continue proving that stories can heal, inspire, and connect us no matter where we are in the world.